Okay, picture this. Everything is falling apart. A medical emergency, a huge project imploding at work, a sudden family crisis. You look around and everyone is panicking, right? Voices are high, movements are frantic, they're just unraveling. But then there's you. Something really weird happens. Your heart rate doesn't spike, it actually steadies. Your mind gets quiet, your vision gets sharp, and suddenly you are the most focused person in the entire room.
Yeah, if that sounds even remotely familiar, you've probably asked yourself this exact question. While everyone else is, having a normal reaction, you're just operating on a completely different wavelength. So what in the world is going on here? Let's get into the psychology behind this incredible calm. So on one side, you have the textbook crisis response. People panic, they scream, they totally freeze up. And on the other side, there's you. Focused, clear, weirdly calm. Now, to anyone watching, you might look a little cold, maybe even detached, like you're not even feeling the stress. But that's not it at all, is it? The truth is, you are feeling it. You're just processing it in a fundamentally different way.
This is probably the best metaphor there is for what's happening. You literally become this quiet center, this pocket of total stillness, while this hurricane of chaos just rages all around you. It's a pretty fascinating state to be in. Your nervous system doesn't see the crisis as some terrifying new thing. No, it categorizes it as something else.
And psychology actually has a name for this. It's called crisis competence. See, it's not a flaw. It's not a lack of feeling. It's a rare and incredibly valuable skill. Your brain just recognizes the pattern of chaos, and instead of freaking out, it switches into this high-performance mode. But this skill doesn't just pop up out of thin air. For almost everyone who has it, it was forged in their past.
So here's the thing. This superpower of yours, it wasn't a gift. For most people with this level of crisis competence, it was an expensive survival skill. It's a skill that you had to learn out of sheer necessity, and a lot of the time, that training started way back in childhood. For so many, the origin story of this trait begins with something called parentification. It's basically what happens when a kid, for whatever reason, has to step up and take on adult roles way too soon, becoming the peacemaker, the problem solver, or even the emotional regulator for the actual adults in their life.
Just stop and think about what that really means. When you're a child in an unpredictable, maybe even chaotic home, your safety depends on being able to analyze a situation before you even open your mouth. You had to become a master of the unspoken language of adult moods, that tiny shift in tone, that heavy silence. Why? Because missing those cues could have real, serious consequences. So what happened is your nervous system essentially got wired into this incredibly sophisticated data collection machine. You developed something called hypervigilant empathy. You learned to see threats coming from a mile away by reading tiny micro-expressions, analyzing vocal tones, and finding the real meaning hidden between the words people were saying. The calm you feel today, it's built on a foundation of years and years spent managing high-stakes emotional situations.
In a way, your environment designed you to be an evolutionary scout. While other kids had the luxury of just being kids, you were being trained to see the patterns, to spot the danger, and to navigate all the unspoken stuff long before anyone else even knew there was a problem.
Okay, so how does all that early training turn into your response as an adult? Well, the science behind why you don't panic now has everything to do with what we call a baseline shift in your nervous system.
This chart explains it perfectly. So most people operate from a pretty low baseline of daily stress. When a huge crisis hits, their system spikes way up into this unfamiliar territory, and that's what triggers panic. But your baseline is naturally higher. You kind of live in a state of readiness. So when that same crisis happens, the jump in stress isn't some terrifying new peak. For your nervous system, it's familiar territory. It's a manageable place to be.
Think of it like this. For other people, a chaotic boardroom meeting or a project that's on fire is a complete disaster. It's hell. For you, it's just Tuesday. This is something called adaptive risk calibration. Your brain has been through enough that it's learned the critical difference between a manageable crisis and, actual terminal danger.
And this goes way beyond just being resilient. There's a much more powerful idea out there called antifragile. So a resilient system can take a hit and bounce back to how it was. But an antifragile system, like your mind, actually gets stronger, sharper, and more focused the more it's exposed to pressure and chaos.
So let's be really, really clear about this. You are not indifferent or emotionless in a crisis. You are battle-tested. You have a resilience muscle that's just so developed from everything you've been through that events that would absolutely ruin someone else's week, they barely even register as a 5-alarm fire to you. Now, society can sometimes look at this trait and label it as being broken or numb. But what if that history of being broken is actually the source of your greatest strength?
In Japanese art, there's this beautiful practice called kintsugi. When a piece of pottery breaks, they don't throw it away. Instead, they carefully piece it back together with lacquer that's been mixed with powdered gold. The cracks aren't hidden, they're highlighted. They become a celebrated part of the object's history, making it even more beautiful and valuable than it was before it was ever broken.
That is you. Your power comes directly from your wounds. Because you have navigated your own personal darkness, you are uniquely equipped with a map. And it's a map that can lead other people out of theirs.
This is what makes you what some call a wounded healer. Your own experiences haven't just made you strong, they've made you incredibly wise. They've given you a very specific and powerful toolkit that you can use to help others.
And this toolkit is exactly what makes you so effective in a crisis. You don't offer empty platitudes like, it's going to be okay. You offer your genuine presence. You don't waste energy on useless gestures. You value doing what actually works. You assess the situation, you wait, and when you finally speak or act, it just cuts right through all the noise.
So, if you are the one that people turn to when their world starts to shake, it's time to understand that you were forged for this very moment. This isn't a burden, it's your purpose.
Look, you've probably been told at some point that your intensity or even your calm is too much, that you feel things too deeply, or somehow not at all. Let's just reframe that right now. It's not too much, it's capacity.
You are a fortress. You are a source of stability and strength when everything else is falling apart. The very history that might have caused you so much pain is now the foundation of the shelter you provide for other people.
And here's the bottom line. The world desperately needs people who can hold steady in a storm, people who have walked through the fire and know the way out. That's you. So, are you ready to own that role? Are you the anchor for your tribe?